if someone gets back to me and they're like, bro, I really felt what you were talking about on that record, and then will bring their own experience in, those are the moments that like my heart flies out of my chest, because it's like, yo, I really accomplished. Maybe I didn't like intentionally set out like, let me jostle the feelings of people, but the accomplishment is like, my favorite artist did this for me. Or there's people whose work I'm a fan of who did this for me. So the goal is always gonna be like, yo, I hope I'm as good as, or I hope I'm as effective as. And it also kind of like shrinks the frame, or it shrinks the scope. So when you recognize that you have the capacity to have an impact on people on that, like, I guess what you would call the micro, the macro doesn't look, it's like an as above, so below thing. So you're like, oh, you're not doing anything special up there, you're just up there. And so the reach is further, but it's not, you're not doing something I'm incapable of doing. And that was probably one of the biggest pieces of like evolving and growing as an artist, and being able to like sit in my expression versus, oh, I like this song, or people seem to like this song, let me try to make something like X.
Nice. Peace. Welcome to another episode of Meet Your Makers. Yeah, we're just chilling, man. Okay, so I was talking to Kayla yesterday.
Okay.
And I realized that I wait 5 to 8 minutes before I have people introduce themselves. Because like, this is a conversation between me and you, and we have conversations all the time.
Right.
I don't need you to introduce yourself to
Right.
me.
Fair.
But then I also forget, like, there's people who might watch this who might not know you.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, well, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am Nil, also known as Nico by my friends, and almost anyone that I come into face-to-face contact with, honestly. Like, I don't really carry my artist or my stage name around like that. But yeah, I'm a multidisciplinary artist and spiritualist. You know, I call myself an alignment consultant, do tarot card readings, write music, I produce music, I engineer, I rap, I sing, I dance. Dance is a really big part of my background, theater, things like that. So, long story short, I'm an artist's artist. Like, that shit is through and through.
Nice.
I don't know many mediums that I haven't touched. It's not that I'm proficient at all of them, but I have touched a crazy amount of things. I can't do what you do, but I can shoot. You know what I'm saying? I can shoot, I can edit, I can frame, I can direct. So what I've recognized is a lot of the things that people rely on for titles are a product of restrictions that have occurred for me. So it's like, I need to get this thing done. I don't have the resources to pay someone to get this done, so it looks like I'm gonna have to learn this.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And through that gathering of like skill sets and stuff like that, sometimes people can be, I think there's two things that occur. One is the like hyper branded, marketed, multi-hyphenate artist, where it's like it was the thing that Kanye West like really rode when he first came out. Like, yo, I make the beats and I make the raps. Now it's like, nigga, not only do we all, perfect example, Havoc from Mobb Deep. He's been doing that since the 90s. Makes the beats, makes the raps. For whatever reason, people didn't think that was like impressive because of how it was presented to them.
Yeah.
And I remember people freaking out about Kanye, like, yo, this nigga makes the raps and the beats? And it's like, that's not a new thing.
Yeah, no.
So I started realizing like the power of marketing, the power of branding and presentation. Because I don't know many artists that are single medium artists. I don't know any. Like, all of them are multidisciplinary. But yeah.
That's the same thing when people found out J. Cole was producing his own tracks too.
Yeah, it's like, and like this is almost par for the course at this point.
Wow.
But I think what it is like when people who are not in the space witness the impact of people who are in the space, and they don't have the words to explain the significance of that person's impact, they'll rely on what sticks out to them. So it's useful, but like I think it's most frustrating as a neurodivergent. You're so aware of all that you are that when people nitpick or like pick that one thing out or that one facet out and say, "Oh, this is you," you're like, I mean, yeah, but there's always that but.
Yeah, but like.
So for me, it's a extension of that experience to watch people reduce artists to their output that matters to them. It's like, bro, there's 6 different roads coming out of this person and you're only worried about this avenue. But when you communicate it, you're acting like this is the only one that exists.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was like kind of interesting. And it took a while for me to be comfortable saying, no, I'm good at these, like all these things, and I do all of these things proficiently.
Yeah, okay. Question. How are you?
I'm good. This is a really heavy time, socially, politically, economically, and spiritually. So that like, we can kind of create a shortcut by reducing it to the spiritual and saying like the transits that are going on right now. There's like 8 fucking planets in retrograde by the end of the month. Yeah, yes and no. It's a grand reset point. I'm working on an ebook on explaining how retrogrades work, but if you look at like retro, which is looking into the past, grade, which is a review, and like a status of efficiency or a status of, I don't know, we all look for that A+. Retrograde, the physical thing that occurs is because of the Earth's tilt on the axis, it looks like the planet's traveling backwards as opposed to traveling forwards in its progression. Yeah. What occurs internally is a review of things that in the Venus retrograde, when we're looking at love and beauty, a review of things that up to this point you've defined as love, you've defined as beauty, you've defined as this is what I want to experience. A lot of people, whether they're in relationships, not in relationships, even amongst their friendships, their family members, are reorganizing and reinterpreting what love looks like to them, which is requiring a lot of like shuffling and moving, and in some places destruction. Yeah. So it can be a destructive time while it's a liberating time because it opens the door for the values that you've decided are present for you today.
No, for sure.
So in working through that, I'm not exempt. Someone asked me a little while ago, like, what do you think the biggest misconception about what you do is? And it's the idea that I'm like exempt from the human experience because I'm so spiritual or like spiritually minded. So like I wouldn't deal with lust, or I wouldn't deal with lack of self-confidence, or I wouldn't deal with, it's like, no, all these things are still present. So it rocks me just like it rocks everybody else. But having the perspective of what's going on and why helps a lot with me feeling joy through all of that like disruption, because it's, I get to come out of this on the other end being very affirmed in what is valuable to me, what is important to me, while recognizing the power that I have to create that environment and experience.
No, for sure. Okay. So then, I'm gonna ask you again. How are you?
I'm well. I be talking, man.
I know. I be listening.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, I still want my answer though.
You say I asked you a question.
No, that's what's up, man.
How about yourself?
I am tired. I've had. So, what's in retrograde right now?
So Venus is in retrograde.
Boom, that's the one.
Yeah.
I've been having conversations I had a conversation with an ex for the past 2 nights.
Oh yeah, exes are definitely popping up.
We had a 3-hour conversation the first night. And then 3-hour conversation that started at like 11 p.m. So I was up till 4.
Yeah, right.
And then
5 hours.
Oh yeah, so probably started at 12 then.
Okay, gotcha.
And then it was up till fucking 4 o'clock. And then we had another one last night. And I was up and it was like an hour and a half. No, it was 2 hours.
Okay.
Because For some reason, I can't have phone conversations longer than 2 hours because my phone will shut off at the 2 hour mark. Like it'll end the call at 2 hours.
Just every single time.
Like every time. So like at around like an hour 55, I let the person know, I'm like, look, we have two options.
Yeah.
We can let it end and be done.
Yep.
Or I can hang up right now and call you back and we can keep it pushing.
Yeah.
So last night I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, no, this is it. This
is all I got.
I'm tapped out.
So like, yeah, in the past 2 days, 6 hours of conversation. And just talking. And so like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
But then also like, I'm doing these videos back to back to back. So I'm also like talking to people for like 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And this is number 4 in 3 days.
God damn.
Yeah.
You out here.
Yeah, but it's like, but part of me is like, these conversations I enjoy because like, a lot of times I just be listening. Like, I don't have to do much. Like,
fair enough.
I ask a question and then people will just talk. I'm like sensational.
It's exactly what I wanted.
So yeah, I'm a little tired, but like I'm present. I'm still showing up. I'm still here. And like that's half the battle, I guess.
Yeah.
Like showing up.
That's something I enjoy about my time with you a lot. Like you're, I call it integrity, but your integrity to the moment does not, most people's presence cannot rival yours in a space. It's like, I know that you're here. When I ask you to be somewhere, like the yes is a full yes.
Yeah.
There's no obligation, it's just like fully pouring out. So it's appreciated, you know what I mean?
So yeah, I've just been having these conversations, man. I was like, let's talk. I'm usually on the other side of the camera, just listening. But this time I was like, let's talk.
Let the people see you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I like to start with like, what are you doing?
What am I doing, or what do I do?
Like, what do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Can you contextualize the question?
Okay.
Because there's like DC, what do you do? And then there's like, you know what I'm saying?
Part of me doesn't want to contextualize the question.
Got it.
I want you to answer through your own interpretation of the question.
Got it. I ask better questions. That's the baseline.
All right.
Whether it's my art, my spiritual practice, tarot reading, I have done a lot of work to train myself to ask better questions. And I think that's the crux of my success and my efficiency with things. It's like, it's repeated in so many different ways. Like I remember, I think it's like a Steve Jobs commencement speech or something like that, where he talks about staying curious. I commonly talk about my ideas when I bring them to friends of mine that I'm looking to get like insight on. I'll be like, hey, I need you to break this for me. And so the question thing is just a way for me to understand or find inequities and address them. And so whether that's in people, in art, in a photo that I'm editing, in music that I'm editing or creating or writing, it's really just about asking the right questions. So I think that like that's at the core of what I do. But the other reason why I think it's so effective externally is because the majority of those questions are aimed at me.
Yeah.
And through gaining that self-knowledge or self-awareness, people become very, I wouldn't say simple. People are always going to be complex, but they become very easy to understand. Yeah, I think that's really it. It's like if you focus on trying to understand other people, you don't actually have, it's like trying to understand a glacier from what's above the water. But if you're the glacier, you're aware of your boundaries, limitations, your borders and edges. So the more you know about how you operate, the more you'll be informed about another glacier. You'll be like, oh, there's probably like 80% below the surface over there.
Yeah.
So it's not as like difficult for you to either account for that, because a lot of people, that's like the whole NPC thing is, I'm only seeing your 20%.
Yeah.
People aren't real. No, they're real. You just are only capable of seeing what's out here. So for you to be like, there's nothing inside, it's like, that's wild presumptuous. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's in all capacities. I mean, like, people come to me for all types of advice, whether it's relationships or work or something like that. And it's like, it's actually funny how unprepared people are to receive questioning about themselves.
Yeah.
They think I'm gonna ask questions. Oh, okay, so tell me about this partner. I don't give a fuck about what's going on with the partner.
Yeah.
This is about your decision quality. So what you've experienced or what you know about that thing is what we're relying on. I'm not gonna dig into, they're not even present.
Yeah.
That don't make sense. So we're gonna ask you questions and figure out what works for you. That don't work for you based on what you told me.
Yeah.
So now you're accountable to yourself and finding that alignment and figuring out whether you need to change your answer or change the circumstance.
Okay. So, what's one question that's been coming up for you recently? Like, what's one question that you've been asking yourself recently?
I think, especially with the context of these retrogrades, does this serve me? Is probably one of the most resounding questions. Yeah. Does this serve me? So whether it's people, whether it's behaviors, habits, addictions, so on and so forth. Like this month I've been analyzing a lot of my cannabis use, where, I started smoking late. So I didn't start smoking until I was like 21, 22, something like that.
That's a good time to start.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Word.
They say there's science that says the brain doesn't stop fully developing until like 21 or 25.
Yeah.
And cannabis doesn't destroy brain cells, but it can inhibit the growth of them.
Ah, okay.
And so,
Got you.
smoking after full development,
Mm-hmm.
it means like, all right.
Put you in a different place.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because I was definitely I was super straight edge up until about 21. I had like one, maybe two incidents with drinking in my like late teens. And even that was I was after high school. I was like 19 years old. But I was just never really that into it. But to get back to what I was saying, the thing with the analyzation of cannabis use is obviously this comes with a cost. And because of the stigmas from society about the use of cannabis, I'll put it this way. If I knew I had, what's the word? When something's like medically like really bad. If I had chronic headaches, right? I'm not thinking about the fact that I take a Tylenol every morning. Yeah. It's not gonna bother me. No one's gonna make me, hey, don't you feel like you're relying on Tylenol? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Man, shut your ass.
Bro, I am an adult with ADHD, autism. I've not been diagnosed. This wasn't addressed or, resources weren't provided in my childhood. Both my kids have ADHD and autism. And so even in my self-diagnosis with the understanding that I have no interest in getting into like pharmaceutical medications, it's like, yo, maybe I shouldn't feel that way about this cannabis use or feel weird about that cannabis use. But at the same time, I'm not gonna pop a Tylenol just because I feel like it, and I very often will smoke just because I feel like it. So it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but it definitely needs to be addressed. And I'm taking this time to figure out how to best make it work for me.
Nice.
But yeah, cannabis, really just like plant medicine in general, has been something. I'm actually forgetting the question that I was answering.
Oh, no. I was asking what questions have been coming up for you recently, and then you were answering.
Does this serve me?
Yeah. And then, does this serve me transition into the, how is cannabis your cannabis use serving you.
Right.
And like reevaluating how you use it.
Right. That. So with that said, it's like I've gone from 6 ounces a month to 2 ounces a month to like maybe half.
Nice.
So far this month.
Yeah.
So the reduction alone is a win. Again, financially, that's gonna have an impact. But you start to recognize that like there's pain, there's what's the word for like when there's too much going on?
Hypersensitivity.
There's pain, there's hypersensitivity, and then there's numbing. Life was so painful up to the age of 20 whatever that numbing became the medication.
Yeah.
As you get older, you're like, oh, I can't be numb because I'm not removing myself from the painful situations because I can't feel what's going on.
Yeah.
So finding that balance where it's like, I've done more this year to lean into discomfort than I remember doing in previous years. I've done more in my 30s to lean into discomfort than I've done in any previous part of my life. In just trying to find a new norm that feels like peace. And then working through the trauma so that I don't disrupt my peace for the sake of excitement or some bullshit. Like, we do that shit all the fucking time.
Bro. All the time.
It's like your subconscious is like, mix this shit up a little bit.
Like, hey, we bored, bro. We bored.
And it's wild. It's like, yo, I will fucking sit. I've had times where I have like wept aspiring for peace in my life. And then there have been times where I've been at complete peace in my life and I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Like, it's like life isn't progressing or feels like it's not progressing, and it's just a really weird thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like getting to the destination and being like, well, wait, I'm supposed to be traveling. It's like, nigga, you're here.
No. It's like going on vacation and being like, okay, how do we get out of here?
Right.
Like, no, man. Like,
we came here to be here.
This is where you rest.
Yeah, bro. Rest is something that's so antithetical to me because of my experiences.
No, cause I guess that's what I was about to ask about too, because like we talked about that when we've been in the crib, and it's just like there was a time where the medication was needed, right? Because high alert all the time, adrenaline's rushing, and this helps regulate me in a way where I can have some semblance of like feeling without having to experience everything that's around me.
Yeah.
And so like that's what I guess. How does that play into the relationship that you're having now, with like the relationship with cannabis that you're having now?
Reiterate the question. I'm sorry.
So like we've talked about how cannabis use was helpful when you were on high alert, and now you're in a space where that's not always the case. High alert isn't always necessary because of the places where you're at now.
Yep.
And so like cannabis use when you're on high alert helps you like
regulate and all that. Yep.
Because if you're hypersensitive and there's a bunch of stuff going on, it's raising your adrenaline. Yeah. Because you're like, what's happening, what's coming. And now you're in a space where like, oh, I don't have to regulate because my environment isn't raising my adrenaline. Yeah. And so like, because we talked about that, so like, how does that now play into this whole conversation of cannabis too? Gotcha.
So for me, it's recognizing what brings me to the, we'll say like maybe like the unpleasurable or displeasurable, whatever the word, displeasure, the displeasurable place, and kind of being, I guess, like more proactive. So like, okay, I'll put it this way. I went home recently. I got a homie back home. He grows like large scale, right? So we go and smoke. And it's like, it's organic, there's no hormones and all that stuff. Yeah, stay out that shit in the fucking dispensary. Don't, bro, find a farmer, local farmers. But I remember smoking with him when I recently went back home. And at one point I was like, yo, we really used to face whole blunt. What the fuck? Why did I do that? Like, I took like 2-3 hits off of a J and I was like, I'm good at this point. Any further and it's like, I'm actually not like operational. So it's like, why did we do that? Like, why? And it's a testament to the level of pain that we were experiencing. We was like, bro, I gotta pull myself out of this and I cannot mentally do it. Now, it's recognizing that I need the calming touch. So because of the amount of like, and I'm kind of like shorthanding here, but because of the amount of abuse that I've experienced in my life, my sensitivity kind of just is what it is. So in recognizing that and knowing that my frustration may not be stemming from the person in front of me, but the amount of information that my brain is attempting to collect in the moment. And I very frequently describe it as static or white noise in my head. And it just reduces the white noise so I can think clearly. Yeah. Because my brain be hopping different trains of thoughts. I look like James Bond on this shit.
When I realized it, for me, because like the way I visualize it now is like, okay, when I smoke, it's like all of the thoughts are categorized in a file cabinet. Mm-hmm. You ever seen like Bruce Almighty?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's how many thoughts I have.
Yeah.
And like, when I smoke, they're neatly in a file cabinet, and I'm like, I can access this one when I need to, and I know exactly where it is.
Right.
Everything's in order. Otherwise, it's just like everything everywhere all at once.
Distraction.
Like, yo.
Yeah. It's like constantly seeing movement in your peripheral. So you're like,
I'm like, so, and like, because we're shooting in the studio, and like we can see outside.
Yeah.
And I know for us, every time I see movement, I'm like,
yeah, right. People gonna be like, man, what was behind the camera? A window, bro.
So yeah. I'm like the same way. That's why I like 2-3 hits. I'm like, I bet I'm good.
I've actually it's been something that I've had to express to my partner at times, because it's like, yo, in order for me to actually listen to you, I need to not look at you.
Yeah.
Because if I look at you, I'm gonna get caught up in the detail of something stupid or whatever, get lost, not miss stuff. Like, I had to have you rephrase your question because I was looking at the ground, bro. And like a bug flew across. So I'm like, wait, what was the question? Like, I now recognize, when I was younger, it didn't even occur to me. Because it was, I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. When I was younger, now that I have the words for it, ADHD and autism was just white people shit. That's really what it was for me. It was like, oh yeah, these white boys are crazy. Because it was their reasoning for why they acted in class a certain way, and I was never acting in class that way. So I'm like, bro, don't blame that shit on anything that's universal. It's gotta be something over there. It's gotta be because white people don't beat their kids. It's gotta be all these other things. I got older and I was like, oh, I've had this shit the whole time and I've just been muscling through. I'm glad I'm so strong, but at the same time, what the fuck? Why didn't someone tell me I didn't have to do that?
I'm exhausted.
And so now it's like, even regulation, I have to find a new baseline.
Yeah.
And every time I think I found a new baseline, life kind of opens up and I'm like, oh, no, this isn't it. I'm still elevated. I'm still sitting on inflammation. Yeah. So it's like, it feels like a never-ending process. Yeah. But I'm going through my own paces with distinguishing the effects of trauma from neurodivergence. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of what people define as neurodivergence is fucking trauma.
Trauma response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's trauma response, bro. Like, sure, well, we can use the word autistic for the sakes of like conversations and like getting help and resources, but in actuality, it's like you're brought up in a system that doesn't give a fuck about you, constantly extracts from you, and pressures you to be valuable enough for them to steal and extract from.
Yeah.
No one is turning up normal.
No.
Everyone is going to be hyper aware about the level of performance, and as generations progress and as people become more and more perceptive, like grandmothers miss nuance in their age because blanket experiences. Things were simpler because lack of nuance.
Yeah.
There is so much fucking nuance now.
It's like, bro.
Fam, you can't keep up.
No.
But because that nuance is like for granted, we are, as a younger generation, very resistant to judgment. We were brought up by people who said this is the way to be.
This is the thing.
It's the only reason why the word neurotypical
It's
exists.
this.
Right.
I'm like,
It's not.
no, it's not. like,
Right.
like you said, we can ask better questions and get to a result that is more inclusive of more people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was something you said too in that part. It was just like, yeah, like I've literally been at networking events with people, and I look them in their eyes, and I'm like, look, I'm going to look away so that I can hear you. And they're like, all right, do your thing. Like, and I'll be staring off into space, and they'll just be talking.
Yep.
And I'll be like, look, that's the only way I'm going to hear you.
Yeah. Because you're a new person, so I'm gonna get caught up in all the stuff that I'm seeing.
Oh, look at your eyes, look at your face, look at all these things. I'm like, dang, that's crazy. And because we had this conversation before too, at the crib, and then we ended up holding hands for the conversation. I was like, oh wow, this is, and I did it, and so I told Kayla about it yesterday, and I was like, well, we also discussed that when it comes to doing this thing with women, I have to be mindful of how I introduce it, because if they're not seeing me do it with multiple people across multiple levels of relationship, it can feel more special than it actually is.
Yeah, intimacy.
We're just like, come on, bro, we held hands while we talked, but then when you say that, you're like, oh damn, people don't hold hands with other people.
Right. It's the exposure to those levels of intimacy that makes all the difference.
I'm like, the level of focus that comes into play when you're holding hands with someone that you're talking to is like, I can't be on my phone.
Right.
Because my phone hand is in hand. So I'm introducing another sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's allowing me to be more present with the person that I'm with. And I was like, dang, hugging people is probably like the same, similar to hugging trees. It's grounding your presence to someone else who is also here. For trees, they're more rooted into the earth, so it's like, it's a deeper
You're really tapping into something, right? But I think even within that idea, people operate from such a space of lack that the assumption is, I don't have enough energy to do that with everybody. And so with romantic relationships, it's safe because this is going to be something that continues. Whereas for most people's other relationships, there's at least a subconscious or background assumption that something will tear us apart at some point. And I wouldn't want to forsake the effort that I've used to gain and it's counterintuitive because it's like, well, the thing that you sink into it would be the reason why I would stick around and be sustainable because investment, that's how that works. But we've been, I think we're hyper socialized to look at community as temporary because it serves the interest of the space that we live in. I was remarking to someone the other day, like the loss of neighborhoods, both suburban and urban, to where it is so difficult to create home that there's constant changing of hands when it comes to places of living. And in that, community can't be formed, neighborhoods can't be formed. So the reason why you have all these like people talk about gentrification, but the gentrification process that occurs is just a removal of black and brown bodies from the spaces. when they put in those like artisanal fucking mustard shop, them shits don't last longer than 3 to 6 months. And then they cycle out and put something else in there.
Yeah.
And it's because there's not a relationship with the community. So the product is like, it could have been anything. This is fluff.
Yeah.
And no one gives a shit. Because do you even really live here? You know what I mean? Whether it's like, you have a space here, but like, do you engage with the community? Do you engage with your neighbors? Nah.
No.
And it's like, I live in a building that has over 1,000 people living in it. I don't know anybody. I know like maybe a handful of people by their first name. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's very weird.
Yeah.
I grew up on a block at one point, because my family moved around a lot, but I definitely spent like, I think it was like a good 4 years on this block. None of the neighbors changed. They all owned their house. We were renting, which is why it was a limited time, but like, I remember that experience and the value of that experience, because going out on the sidewalk and playing outside was the way it was, because the kids that are outside are only going to be with the parents who are next door, the parents across the street who also know those kids. So like going to their yard.
It's nothing.
Yeah, I know. My mom knows them.
Yeah. They
They go over for tea. They hang out. They fucking go shopping together and all that stuff. That shit doesn't fucking happen anymore.
No. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think it still exists in some places, but
For sure.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
And I think we like build or we like create community and stuff like that. But I was watching this movie with Cam the other day. It's called Don't Worry, Darling. So it's like Florence Pugh,
I'll be watching.
Harry Styles. Yeah, I love movies.
I'll be
I
watching.
love movies. So have you seen it?
No.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it, but I don't know, but who's watching? Fuck. Yeah, so Don't Worry, Darling. It's this really cool movie where you get introduced to the film and everything's kind of like ideal 50s, 60s, West Coast, California, like cul-de-sac, right? So you're watching and like there's something that's like off, but you're trying to figure out what it is. And later on in the film, spoiler alert, later on in the film, it's shown to be like a simulation. And so the world, it's worse than, worse is, you know what I'm saying? Because we're getting real close to Blade Runner level like experiences. Like, bro, that fucking first of all, the Canadian wildfires that I've not seen a single picture of.
Yeah.
The fucking yellow smog that was just over our shit. Who knows what that shit is? Like here in New York, Philly, like all those places. I understand that fires happen, but in 34 years of life, I've never heard of Canadian wildfire, but also global warming.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this guy, or Harry Styles' character is actually like this, he's like not a bum, but he's like, he loses his job. He doesn't have a career. And Florence plays like a nurse. She's not even a nurse. She's a doctor. She's an MD. So she's going and she's doing these like double shifts or whatever to cover for him in their relationship while he's trying to get things going for himself. But like the way that they present him is, to be honest with you, it actually doesn't even make sense with the Florence Pugh character, because it's like, so she's that successful as a doctor. Granted, she's doing double shifts or whatever, but like, why the fuck is she with this guy? He has stringy hair, glasses, fucking, not that glasses are bad, but he has stringy hair, these big ass like T-bone glasses or whatever. And he's made to look like he's a wreck, right? Like they make everything about Harry Styles as unattractive as possible for those scenes. He gets brought in by Chris Pine's character, who's like what's that dude's name? The fucking bald one that got hit up for sex trafficking in like Romania. Tate.
Yeah.
So he's like an Andrew Tate-ish type of character. And you find out that what he does is he pulls people in through his like sermons on the internet about like what life is supposed to be and your true self, right? He pulls in these like incels and like these like weak-minded people who are looking for relevance. And he gives them this like technology, these like eye things that they put on, and it puts them in a virtual world, which is the 1950s like perfect thing. So like he comes home and every day like Florence has a drink for him at the door and like she makes dinner and they fuck every time that he comes home and You end up finding out throughout the course of the movie because like there's someone else in the community who's like, yo, something's wrong with this, like something's not right, and like she's seen his spacey, and there's very like all the men are very, it's 1950s, 60s, like they leave every morning, they all go to work, the women stay home, clean the house, do all this stuff or whatever, and like they're all supposed to think, isn't this so great? And the Chris Pine character is like, look what he's created for us, and like there seems to be a thing where the wives don't remember a life outside of this. But it's done in a way where it's like in conversation, they'll be like, yeah, you know, I like barely remember what my life was like before I got here. And they just blissfully move on to the next thing. Oh, wow. So it's all that going on. And Florence basically like figures out what's going on, pulls herself out of the simulation or whatever, and kind of remembers, right? But the point of me telling the story is me and Cam were saying, like, she goes, hey, like at a certain point in the film, she was like, yo, but like, do you think that you would ever want that? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you know, like you owe Tommy Q, like you guys all have like houses on the cul-de-sac, so like y'all do the backyard thing and like have beers and like our families have dinner together. And I'm like, it sounds great. So like at face value, the answer is yes. Yeah. However, recognizing that system only exists through patriarchy, like by leaning into it so heavily that it's like the women are not staying at home because they're taken care of. They don't have another option. They are property. So they have to stay home, or they have to stay within the boundaries of X, Y, and Z. So it's the subtext. Yeah. And we're so conditioned to accept the values of patriarchy that there's even a desire to go, well, like, isn't that so nice though? Like, it's just simple. Like, I don't, you know, I'm taken care of. I take care of the home and and like you go and you do the thing. And it's like, yeah, but there's a power dynamic that's present that you're not seeing. Yeah,
I think so.
Which isn't to say like universally bad. Yeah. Just there's nuance.
That's so. Yeah. So I see what you're saying, but also in the sense of like looking at the thing, seeing it, recognizing that this has the capacity to exist. Mm-hmm. Like in these spaces, this power dynamic has the capacity to exist, and because you're aware of it, like you said, like because this is something that you said before, but because you're aware of it, you know not to replicate it, or when it comes up, you can like
counteract it,
go the other way.
Yeah.
I'm like, you have
because you see it.
Yeah. Because you're aware of it, because you know it has the propensity to exist in the spaces that you're going into, you're mindful to move the other way or make adjustments so that it's not present. Where it's just like like the same question for her is like, is this something that you would want?
Right.
Where it's just like, if this is what you want. In the sense of like being able to live simply, have your house, have your friends, still be able to travel. Should we have that capacity? Yeah. When shit hits the fan. God damn. Buy this license.
You know what I'm saying?
But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if that's something that she wants, and it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
If we come to agreement to be in this space, and it's like, oh yeah, we do the garden, we got the house.
So there's actually, two things. There's nuance in the film, because while by the end of the film, like Florence pulls herself out and is like, fuck all this shit. Yeah. There's her best friend in the simulation. There's like a break moment, like maybe in the latter like third of the film, where she's like cracking and like, yo, something's not right. Like there's a lot of gaslighting. Yeah. So it's like, yo, you're being edgy, you're being like, you're you know, imagining things is like it's very much a Stepford Wife thing. Yeah. She's talking to her friend who's played by Olivia Wilde, and it's like, she's trying to like tell her like, yo, this is what's going on, this is what's going on. She's trying to like calm her down or whatever. And then she breaks from the gaslight that everyone else is doing and is like, yo, I know. And she's like, what? And she's like, I know, I've known the whole time, like, And she was like, why the fuck wouldn't you tell me? And right? I forgot to mention, they don't have kids. Harry and Florence don't have kids. This woman next door has kids. Yeah. She was like, because here my kids still exist. And you're like, oh, wow. Yeah. That's heavy, but you opted for this.
Yeah.
And we talked about this at the pool, but it's like basically relating that to the concept of capitalism and all that and like our participation. Bro, the world has consented to this.
Yeah.
So while you may not agree with it, while you may see the poison in it and stuff like that, that doesn't change that people have made a conscious decision to say this is a system that we're gonna operate by. So at that point, your accountability is not to breaking the system, it's honoring people's consent or creating your own and saying, I'm gonna withdraw myself. But that like, it killed the activists in me. Like, and I've seen this growing as a movement amongst Black people where it's like, activism. Why? Separatism is gonna be closer to my goals than being an active participant. I actually don't wanna participate. So let me just not. And eject myself in the game. And the movie kind of, I think, presents that because some of what gets provided is like, well, yo, but like, wouldn't you want to be in here where it's safe? You're always fed, the food is great, the drinks are great, the friends are great, da, da, da. And it's like, it is. But it's not real.
Yeah.
And her whole thing is, she got duped, right? So like the boyfriend, like, I don't know, knocked her out or some shit and put her in the thing.
Yeah.
Which is part of the program. Like you pick your wife, it's disgusting. You pick your wife, put them in the thing, and then they get like...
they get set up into the simulation.
It's a hypnotic thing that pulls you in. So where was I going with that?
Capitalism, activism, separatism.
The idea of pulling out for her is, yo, it is great here. And like, and that's the other thing. There's this like, she really loves this nigga. You're watching, you're like, this nigga's fucked up, he's a loser, that's fucked up. Why would you do that? You took choice from someone, he's a monster. Bro, she loves him to the end. But it's like, but it was my choice. And he's like, yo, you were miserable. Like you hated going to that job and having to work all those hours to cover us and da da da. That's the other thing. So when he leaves to go to work every day, what's happening is the men all leave to actually work so they can pay to keep them and their wives in the simulation. So it's wild. So it's like, he did do something.
Crazy.
But for her, she's just like, yo, but I loved that I had the choice. I wanted to go to work. I loved what I did. Like that, you took that from me without asking. And he's genuinely like, you were fucking miserable. I was trying to help you. And that like interplay of like, really the interplay of patriarchy, masculinity, and its effect on consent and the personhood of women.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
It's a dope film, bro. It's a dope film. Like, I did not expect for it to be that good. It's a fire film. Like, they really did. And it was directed by Olivia Wilde, and there was apparently a ton of controversy around it because she either left or ended up being unfaithful to Jason Sudeikis, the guy who does Ted Lasso. They were, like, together for years. And she, like, I guess, like, left him, started dating Harry Styles. It was messy. Like, it's like like, what's funny is, like, I could see it happening in DC, but, like, it's basically, like, you know, she showed up to set, fell for this nigga out of nowhere. Like, bro, it's wild. It's very weird. So there's a lot of controversy around the film. Like, people who were part of the film didn't promote it, like, didn't want to be involved or whatever. Like, look into it. But the film itself is actually really well done.
Nice. All right, so as we come to a close, what I want to say, I guess, what are you making currently?
I am making educational resources and experiences to extract people from the religious patterns that they are unwillingly a part of.
And then, who are you making it for?
Black people.
Nice. And
my type is black.
Where can people find what you're making?
So bio.site/NNIL has all the links on there. But if that was too fast for y'all, just go to the Instagram, NNIL, and click the link in my bio. Everything from the e-guides is there. My tarot theory club is there if you're looking to learn how to read, or just join a community of like-minded people who enjoy that.
Read cards. This is not a literacy for.
Yeah, read cards if you enjoy. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not a book club.
Yeah, we're not teaching you how to read books.
We are teaching you how to read cards. Teach you how to read tarot cards. And as far as experiences, right now what I'm working on is bringing plant medicine to BIPOC communities in a safe environment where they can get exposed to this stuff, and kind of reformat people's thoughts about plant medicine versus pharmaceuticals, and showing them that there's an alternative or a different way that might be more in alignment with where they are or where they want to be.
Nice. Cool. Solid. Well, peace. It's another episode of Meet Your Makers.
Much love. Thank you all for coming.